All right, let's get started. So the main thing that we want to go over this month is a SEP that I got out just under the wire this morning that we've been working on for a while. We've already gone over this with a lot of our larger contributors and customers, gotten a lot of feedback, and feel as though it's ready for a wider review. Now, this is primarily around changing how our release strategy is going to work. So as many of you have noticed and commented over the years, we've struggled to maintain a consistent release strategy. Now, what this culminates in is that it takes longer for us to get your pull requests into the code base, and when there's larger deltas between releases, it's easier for bugs to sneak in. Now, we've already made a number of adjustments to accepting pull requests around making sure the tests are present, as well as working towards raising the overall quality of the releases. We've also done a lot of work into stabilizing our certain branches so that we can hopefully make our releases something that's more, again, streamlined, something that is closer and more akin to the releases that you would expect from a CI/CD style deployment. So let's see, what we're looking at is that what we want to do is take the 2019-2.1 branch. So if we go back, we've spent a considerable amount of time stabilizing the test suite on 2019-2.1. We've taken a considerable amount of time making sure that not only that test suite is green, but it stays green, that we fix a lot of the problems that we've had with intermediate failures of tests, as well as test consistency and a number of test performance issues. And given that that branch is very stable from a test perspective, and that the Neon and Develop branches are in worse shape than 2019-2.1 was when we started, the proposal is that we take the 2019-2.1 branch and we branch off of it and create a new master branch. And then from this master branch, we take the pull requests that have emerged into the Neon and Develop branches, and we backport them to the master branch, and we double check and ensure that those pull requests and that code have tests and that they're passing tests, so that we do not recreate the same test issues that we currently see in those branches. Now, if I back up and go over this really quickly, the assumption here is that it's easier for us to port the additions and fixes that are inside of Develop a Neon to a new master branch that is based on an already test stable branch than it is for us to go back and clean up the Neon and Develop branches. We feel as though that will take considerably less time, and then we can do it in a much more direct and clear fashion. Now, moving forward from that master branch, we have proposed that we abandon date-based release numbers. This has never been a very popular thing. So I'll certainly concede that decision I made a while back. And that we begin with release numbers that start with 3000, so that it's very clear that we're not date-based anymore, and we just start moving forward on a per release basis. The goal then is that off of the master branch, we are able to maintain stability, and that from that master branch, we then start releasing software in a much more streamlined way. So the idea there being that the master branch will become Neon. After Neon is released, we will find any critical issues. Now, of course, let me back up a second. Before we release a Neon, of course, we will release an RC. We will look for critical issues and repair those issues before getting the final Neon out. The goal there, though, is that if we have a stable branch, when we go back and we look at the things that have caused release slowdown in the past, it's primarily just getting our test suite in a stable place and then running through extensive manual tests. And so we feel that having our test suite in a stable place, which over and over again was the thing that was taking us just months before every release to sharpen up. We feel that having that in a stable place will significantly accelerate our ability to get these releases out. And so, yeah, we'll have an RC, multiple RCs if we deem necessary, and we'll be able to release significantly faster. We've also gone through our overall release processes, which have organically become heavy over the years. And again, if we have this assumption that the master branch is test stable, then it becomes significantly easier for us to get these releases out. Now, since we are able to release directly off of a stable master branch, we don't expect that we should have to wait as long between releases. This also frees up a significant amount of time, as I'll illustrate in a later slide, with respect to what our current strategy looks like. In this situation, we're effectively maintaining one master branch and then being able to release off of that one master branch, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is actively maintaining multiple releases. So this also means that we should be able to release on a more as needed basis. The goal being every 4 months for a major release through neon, sodium, magnesium, etc., all the way up past Einsteinium, right? And this, though, also, again, gives us the opportunity to say that if we feel there is a critical need that mandates that we cut a release sooner, we're capable of doing that under this new strategy. All right, so moving forward.
The naming, did you talk about?
Yeah.
If that completes the discussion, we can move to the question and answer portion.
Well, no, I mean, don't we have a slide on the old way of doing things? Oh, sorry. So the main difference here is that how we've been doing this before is that we have been maintaining on average somewhere between 5 to 8 branches at any given time. The reason for this is that we would create point release branches and we would maintain point release branches, and then we would have this merge forward dance. We determined that the merge forward dance, as well as the maintenance of all of these different point release branches and major release branches, was in large part the thing that was slowing us down and preventing us from doing really anything other than just constantly working on releases, and preventing us from moving the project forward in a big way. Now, there is a SEP that has been posted. It is SEP 14, which goes into a number of these things in more detail. We have gone through and made considerations around how we're going to handle CVEs, as well as point releases, how we're going to look at the criticality of bugs. One of the other things is that one of the main motivations that people generally have for getting their code into a point release, this is one of the things that kind of muddies the water, is that people want desperately to get their code into a point release because they feel that point release is going to come out sooner. And oftentimes we've given into this, and the end result has been increased instability in point releases. Whereas we feel that this master branch strategy will achieve one of the main goals that we want, which is we're going to get your code merged and in releases much, much more quickly. We desperately want to avoid continuing down the path of making it so that your pull requests take a considerable amount of time before they show up inside of releases. And that's our main hope here, is that we can speed that whole thing up. All right, Kavya, is there anything that I missed that you think we should go over?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything.
All right. And fortunately, we should have Daniel Wozniak and Mo on the line, who should be able to assist in answering questions of a more granular nature. But now we will open this up for Q&A so that, so that we can discover what concerns or what things we haven't necessarily covered in this very brief overview, or what might not be covered in the SEP. So feel free to hammer us with some questions, because this is goodness, right? I mean, branch strategy changes are big. And I mean, we have spent the last 2 months going over this and going over it with customers, et cetera. Okay, do you plan a feature freeze period after a first RC is out? Daniel, are you there? You might be able to handle how we plan on managing branch fluidity.
Sure. So we plan on trying to get to a 4-month release cadence, and the RC should come out about a month before the release. So essentially, yes, we plan to do a feature freeze period, and that will be for about a month.
So yeah, being patient on questions, primarily because I did just toss a whopper at everybody. I didn't go over all of the details that we have. Oh, excellent. When should we start backporting the PRs from Neon? So what we want to do is get that master branch created as quickly as possible now that we've presented the plan, and start backporting these as quickly as possible. Again, Daniel, sorry, I guess you.
So we actually do have a master branch created, so people can start opening PRs to that branch now. It will probably be after 2019 2.2 is out, which we plan to tag imminently. But once 2.2 is out is when you'll start seeing things get merged into master.
So Austin is asking, can you explain how feature dev work is executed in this new strategy?
Just create your feature pull requests to master, make sure they have tests, and as the tests are passing, we will merge them in.
Pablo is asking, so we will create PRs to master for both features and fixes. How to control what is going to be included into a 3001 point release and whatnot.
So after we release, we have we have two plans for being able to do point releases. After we release, we plan on doing about a 2-week, like staying in a code freeze for about 2 weeks. So we'll already be in a code freeze from the RC. We'll do our release, and then we plan to stay in a code freeze for about 2 weeks, which will allow us to put in only bug fixes. If the 2 weeks passes and we find a critical bug where we've started to add in, once we've started to add in features, we will go ahead and create a temporary branch off of the tag of the last release. And from there, we'll apply any bug fixes we need to, cut the release, and merge back into master.
I think it's worthwhile to emphasize both for Austin and Pablo's comments, the element of the prior sub that had been introduced and the change around the test and the quality. Because the combination of both of those pieces will hopefully get us to that more stable cadence. One is ensuring that there are tests and that the tests are robust and complete and that they're passing. And then the second one is the window of time in which we're trying to create the cadence between the 3000, 3001, 3002, and so on and so forth. I think both of those are worth highlighting again, because that's partially how your PR will go in, Austin.
Okay, so Max Arnold asks, so 1.5 month being long feature freeze periods, 1 month before and 2 weeks after, question mark?
Yep, that sounds correct. That's what we planned for this first release. If it turns out, 1 month is too long to have an RC out, we can make adjustment from there. But right now, the initial plan is for 1 month prior, we'll be in a RC feature freeze, and then for about 2 weeks after, we'll stay in like a bug fix only freeze.
Now, of course, during that time period, we can still accept pull requests that are features. It's just that we'll just hold off on merging them until the freeze period is finished. So there shouldn't be anything that should prevent the development of features in those cycles. It's the feature that's submitted in, so say we're frozen for sodium, and the feature that is submitted before, right, in that 1 month freeze before sodium is just gonna make it in magnesium. But again, the upshot here is that we anticipate that we'll get to magnesium significantly faster than we would given our current cadence.
Correct.
We also hope that this simplifies code submission, since everything that you would give us would just go straight into master.
Yeah.
What if this 4 months cadence between major releases? Oh, sorry, I'm reading it incorrectly. With this 4 month cadence between major releases, are we expecting then 3 major releases per year? Yes, that is the goal.
I think one of the things to also make a note of is we would currently want to get on a much more predictable cadence of 4 months, but really our long-term goal is that we should be able to release whenever we want. So likely it'll be even shorter than the 4 month cycle.
So Austin says, I know you just submitted SEP 14. Is all of this defined in that one? Didn't get time to fully read. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of these things are defined inside of the SEP. If you feel as though there's a lack of in the SEP, again, please let us know in the comments so that we can update that. Mark Smith is asking, just to clarify, is master the new develop? In a way, yes, we're just treating it differently than develop. And so we felt that a change in the branch name would also help in kind of a cultural shift. Next, we've got a question. I must admit, I still find that 3001.1 should just be a patch in a 3001 branch. 3001 branch should never go back to master and is purely for bug fixing, tag, sorry. That's in large part what we're trying to do. Daniel might be able to answer that a little more carefully, but yeah, the goal here is that we don't need to maintain a bunch of extra branches that we're forward merging from, because we should be able to isolate critical bug fixes.
Yeah, so the one issue with not merging back into master is just that we have a high likelihood that there would be a bug that got fixed, but then regressed in a future release. So one of the things we're doing is with all bug fixes, we're requiring regression tests so that we don't get into that situation.
Pablo says, I was thinking on the deprecation warnings. And so let's see. Deprecations are something that we've brought up a number of times inside of our discussions. We didn't put a lot of information about deprecation inside of this SEP. And you are right in that this would accelerate deprecation of features. One of the big pushes that I've had is that we should either slow down or change our attitude towards deprecations. We've been, I feel, far too cavalier when it comes to deprecating things, and that we have deprecated things often too quickly, and that we've deprecated things that don't need to be deprecated. Our deprecation policy has been 2 major releases. We are still on track for things like migrating to Python 3 in the Sodium release, because those timelines are still in line with original timelines that we were expecting for the Sodium release to come out. Now, with that said, when it comes to deprecations, there are 2 major areas of deprecations that we still need to come out with a solid SEP on. And those areas are deprecating versions of Python so that we can so we don't have to have a difficult discussion every time we move from our oldest supported version of Python from, say, 3.5 to 3.6 or 3.6 to 3.7 in later years. We need to be able to make sure that we have a policy in place so that this migration can be expected. And so that everybody can expect it to happen in the distant future, and so that we can address that. The other area around deprecation is that we've added a number of little deprecations in the code over the years. And I think that there are a number of areas where we should have a more stringent rule set around how we deprecate things. So in a nutshell, Pablo, I understand the concern around deprecation, particularly on deprecation of Python 2 and moving into Python 3. I've talked with many people about the Python 2 deprecation and again, moving to Python 3. But, and that there has been a fair amount of pushback that we don't accelerate to versions of Python 3, like getting all the way up to 3.7 too quickly. And so that's why that is still an open question and why we need to put a SEP together to have that long-term rule in place. Let's see, Daniel, do you have any other comments on some of the questions that have come through?
So yeah, we had one, let's see. You cherry pick them from master into 3001. So this goes back to the having 3001 and have that be bug fix only. So that's essentially what we are doing. The question of whether we actually create the bug fix against the 3001 branch, or we add them to master and then cherry pick them, that's something that we've discussed, and you know, you can certainly comment on the SEP. We can discuss that further. The one thing to note there is that we don't plan on having a long-running 3001 branch. Once 3001 is out and everything is in sync between the 3001 branch and master, the 3001 branch will be removed. We'll have a tag for where we released, but the 3001 branch itself will be removed, and we will create a new branch if we need to do another release. The primary reason for that is that if you look at the branches that live over time and the test suite that runs against those branches, they quickly become crufty and things start breaking, even though no changes are happening. This is because versions of dependencies change, slight changes in our CI environment and things like that will just start to have those branches degrade over time. So we want to keep our focus on one branch and keep our focus on making sure that the CI pipeline is stable.
Thank you, Daniel. Matt Phillips has a comment on it would make a lot of sense if we run CI on a number of salt formulas because we have real world cases out there. I completely agree. One of the challenges again that we've had is that we've spent a lot of time just keeping our test suite running for all of these different branches that we've been maintaining. So the aspiration is that we can continue to deepen our test suite as opposed to what we've been doing, which is more along the lines of keeping it stable. With that said, it becomes very easy for us to do things like have real world nightlies that are running over large groups of states. Now, Christian McHugh asks, have large customers been polled? Would the expectation be that SALT environments would need to be updated at least every year? So large customers have been polled. We are continually polling customers, and we haven't been able to talk to all of our customers quite yet, but we have talked to quite a few. This concern has come up, certainly, that the upgrade strategy needs to, what the upgrade strategy looks like. We are committed, especially in the case of our customers and our large-scale customers where we understand that regular updates can be difficult. We are committed to a number of things. One is the creation of tools that we're currently working on. I talked a little bit about HEIS in our last office hours that should make upgrades easier. One of the other things that we're doing is also looking into what our long-term support strategies are. So some of those long-term support strategies are still being formulated in cooperation with customers and as we continue to reach out to customers. So this does not give us, this SEP doesn't give us a hard view on what that LTS strategy needs to look like quite yet, as again, that's still being formulated. Another question, how many major releases will be considered stable or supported? Daniel, I've got comments on that. Do you want to take a swing at it first?
We have an existing support matrix page, and essentially we're going to stick to the same kind of timelines as we did in the past.
So when we look at supporting releases and we look at how releases have been supported, it's all about getting critical fixes in right after a release comes out. And then the need to get those bug fixes in can wane over time. And then we need to make sure that we're supporting those releases from a CVE perspective. We certainly plan on supporting releases back from a CVE perspective. And again, while we are still working with customers to determine exactly what that should look like, we're planning on supporting CVE fixes, especially back perhaps further than our current support sequence is. Again, primarily because if we're looking at it from that perspective, it should be a lot easier for us to backport really critical fixes or CVE fixes into older releases. Let's see. Will you be moving commits? Oh yeah, go ahead now.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to make a comment around the stable aspect. Frankly, if you look through the SEP and much of what's being discussed in here, one of our major goals in applying this particular best practice or approach is to achieve both of those, the stability dimension and the confidence in the cadence that we are sharing with the team. Both of those are the primary goals behind all of these changes. So the notion of stability comes from the great work of ongoing tests that work, expanded tests, as per one of the other comments that has been laid out in the chat as well, including what we would be calling an investment in real-life test case expansion. So there's a variety of efforts in there around how we achieve that stability. So just wanted to underline that point. Our goal is that it is seen stable, and our goal is to walk away from perhaps historic notions that says a particular classification of a release denotes stable or not stable. There's been maybe a little bit more of a historic view that says, oh, a .1 is better than a .0 or so on and so forth. That's not the goal in here. The goal is to achieve a level of high confidence and stability in each one of those. And that's the big investment that we're putting in as a team.
So Mark asks, will you be moving commits from 3001 over to master before the branch is deleted? Is that the purpose of the post-release freeze? Wayne, it looks like you responded to that. Do you have any other comments that you'd like to, let's see, and Mark, further to explain my thinking, either nothing gets changed on master during the freeze other than release-based fixes changes, in which case tags are fine. Otherwise, if you use a branch, then they're going to diverge and need to be merged before delete. Yeah, Wayne or Daniel, do you have more color there?
Mark basically nailed that. So we plan on doing a freeze where nothing gets merged in except for release-based fixes. And then for 2 weeks afterwards, we'll still be in a free where we have time to cut a .1 if needed. If after that time period we need a .2, then we will create a branch. The branch will just be for .2. We'll make all of the bug fixes we need there and then merge that back into master. Once the tag is made, we'll merge that back into master and delete the branch.
Okay, Max is asking, how long can you expect this test deepening process to take so it can reliably prevent the regressions like those found in 2019-2.1? So one of the major goals that we have is shortening the delta of changes between releases. 2019-2.1 represents as many changes as would normally go into a major feature release. And this is where these sorts of regressions come from in a really big way. And so the process itself is definitely geared around critical fixes right after a release comes out so that we can avoid having a point release that takes many months to come out and ends up having hundreds to over 1,000 PRs and commits in it. Now, the question about test deepening is that we expect test deepening to happen very quickly. The goal here being that, again, since we aren't in the process of maintaining 6 to 8 separate branches and our lives aren't consumed with merge forwards, we should be able to get tests deepened really up for the Neon release and continue to do so through sodium and magnesium. So yes, the goal is that we can deepen test coverage very quickly.
Yeah, so one thing to note about that is, go ahead, Mo.
No, please, Diwaz, you go first.
Okay, I was just gonna say that we are requiring tests for all changes. So that in and of itself should help increase test coverage over time. We're also tracking our test coverage when the test suite runs. And in the next release for Neon, we're going to choose specific portions of the code which are lacking coverage and focus. We're still working on our planning, but we're gonna focus on certain sections of the code and make sure that we get the coverage up to snuff on those files.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned what I was going to call out around expanding our coverage across multiple dimensions, code paths. The only one I would add into it is that we have a great advantage in the form of our support organization and the patterns that they build out, which are a little bit more, consider them golden thread. We're going to also be introducing those tests as part of our cycle. So the notion of a deepening of the test it's more deepening, but it's also widening the aperture of what we're testing for and the patterns. And all of that, as Tom said, is something that we are investing aggressively in. So that's our goal, that's our focus, and we'll be happy to share as these calls go on more and more, month to month around what is it that we're introducing, what is it that we're trying to do, and give some transparency to all of those efforts.
Yeah, another thing we plan on doing over time is we're moving towards this more sort of quote unquote continuous release idea, where we're going to be trying to actually automate our package builds so that we end up with nightly builds, and then actually testing the artifacts before they automatically testing the artifacts. Right now we do testing against artifacts, but a lot of that is manual. We want to automate those tests and add lots more tests for those packages.
This is also probably a good time to plug in advert for our testing and release work group. So great thanks to our colleagues who are part of that work group, who are also helping us shape both the improvements and the approach and so on. And that's a cross-organizational, effort. So if anybody's passionate or have some strong thoughts or ideas around how we can, drive further on that, then please, join into that group. They're helping us shape much of what we're talking about here.
Okay, the next question is, can you make a tutorial on how we're supposed to run the tests and test locally before creating a merge request? I'd imagine they require some kind of environment. And an answer of non-destructive tests don't require a special environment, but destructive tests do. What's the best answer that we might have for that?
So we've moved to Nox recently, which means that you can run the tests. You can run them. It'll automatically create the virtual environment for you. It'll install the dependencies that we use currently in our CI/CD pipeline, and we'll run those tests. So that gets you pretty close to what we're doing in CI/CD. And as we make progress in this area, we are definitely have in the back of our minds of anything we can do to make it easier for community members to run the tests and run the tests in a very similar fashion than we do in CI/CD is valuable. So we're definitely going to be focusing on that in the upcoming months.
Yeah, and we will also be improving our documentation for tutorials and just trying to help you guys be able to develop Salt a lot easier. I know that's a weak spot that we have right now, but yeah, Gareth and I are definitely planning to do some work on that soon. So if there's anything that you've found that is difficult to understand, do please share that so we can make sure to address that as we go ahead and build out these videos and other things.
One additional thing that I would like to mention is that Pedro has made some effort in running the tests in Docker containers. So this puts makes it a little bit more lightweight. Lightweight is the word. So it makes it a little bit more lightweight to run the tests, and you don't have to spin up several virtual machines.
Thank you, Jochen.
Yep, and that's that initiative came directly from the testing working group. So again, as Mo pointed out, we do have that working group established, and people can feel free to join that anytime.
So Mark has a packaging question more than release related, but are there any plans to remove non-Windows modules from the Windows release and vice versa? There are plans. I will admit they're not super high priority. Yes, that would help with startup time. We expect that would actually help with a number of situations. I do think that that would help more on Windows than it would on Linux, as I look back at a lot of the profiling that we have done over the years, particularly in how Windows has to load up those modules when it forks processes. I certainly think that this would be a reasonable thing to add. I also want to say that, frankly, all we need to do is remove those from the installer when we're doing the installation build. And so, if you want to get those in sooner, you can certainly take a look at the installer. One of the other things that's a little newer that I've been working on is a project called SaltBin. And SaltBin, I haven't got it working on Windows yet. I've been trying to just get it off the ground. But SaltBin creates single static binaries of salt. Similarly, my hope is that we could do something like that on Windows, and again, similarly, that would allow us to, inside of that process, very easily strip out a lot of modules. So that's definitely something that is on the radar. But again, to be honest, we've been focused on a few other fires first. And again, if you want to make a PR to the Windows installer, you'd be more than, we would love to see that.
The current Windows installer does remove a lot of modules. It doesn't package everything.
Oh, okay. So Shane's, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not the king of what's needed. So I kind of did save things that I thought were safe to remove. There's probably room to go through and fine tune that some more.
Okay, I know that'd be an easy thing for you and I to sit down and refresh that list. Because now that you mention it, I do remember that we have done this and that I was involved in that. Sorry about my poor memory on that.
That might be a good opportunity for the Windows working group to tackle, which would be great if you're interested in that to go help out with the Windows working group.
Definitely, yeah. And again, I mean, it would make sense to bring in somebody who has experience knowing which packages just are irrelevant on Windows in general, instead of only going through the virtual functions and saying which ones of these say explicitly don't load on Windows. All right, the next question is, I think this really interacts with the question, should salt releases be split into multiple packages to be installed individually? But I don't think that should be the focus just yet. Separate deb for cloud modules, etc. Yeah, this is a highly divergent topic, I think, from what we're going over right now. Diving into releases as well as carving up. I think in a perfect world, I've talked publicly about some of the new projects I'm working on that are going to take a little more time to see fruition, particularly things like POP and some of these efforts to make more of all of the modules in SALT more pluggable and separatable and tested in isolation and these sorts of things to speed up processes. I certainly do think that in the long run we should have things like platform support potentially in different repositories and packages, as well as things like cloud modules, because there are a lot of modules that are irrelevant to the use cases which our installs are being related to. But yeah, I think that's a different focus. And just like you say, I don't think that should be a focus just yet for this particular discussion. But definitely on the radar. And if you want to help out there, go look at POP and give me some feedback. A lot of people haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at POP. It's very, very new. But it's basically the salt loader created in such a way that would make it easier for us to create more pluggable software and hopefully separate things out like cloud modules, et cetera, in a much more streamlined way.
Oh.
Where is this? Sorry?
Where's POP, I think?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on our GitHub account. So saltstack/pop.git. So yeah, github.com/saltstack/pop. But again, we're pretty divergent from from questions around the SEP, which is actually making me feel as though we've answered a lot of the questions around the SEP. Are there any other burning questions, particularly around these proposals to refine the release strategy and the branching strategy? Seems not. I was going to say, this is always one of those, this is awkward every time we do this. Oh, Vic asks, it was mentioned that the 3001.1 branch gets deleted once done. What happens if a .2 or .3 is needed?
I think D was answered that, but yeah.
Yeah, we will go ahead and create a new branch off of the tag of 3000.1.
Okay, and Mark Smith says the only minor concern is the length of time people might have to wait for fixes. But I suspect that's been covered in shorter release times and nightly builds. Yeah, I mean, really, Mark, the problem we've had is that it's taken too long to get fixes to people. I mean, that's the big reason why we're doing it, is to try and get fixes out quicker. If we've got a shorter release cadence and we don't need to maintain extra branches, we should be able to need fewer fixes in major releases. We should also be able to get those fixes out for a .1 and .2 much more quickly, as it happens in those first couple of weeks right after the release. But then we should be able to have those fixes in major releases coming down the pipe as well. So again, the goal here is shorter release times and nightly builds and all of these sorts of things exactly are geared towards getting you fixes faster.
Yeah, and I will echo what you just said, Tom, with a comment that you all said. We as a team and all of us as a community, we will continue to strive towards this continuous release capability where we're able to actually even look at more flexibility in how we get things that are important out there. We've laid out, I guess, on the screen, the cadence and the structure that will define that acceleration and better stability. But we're always going to strive more and more to do better around the ability to get these patches out. And I think we've learned one or two things from our recent release cycle that helps us understand how we can get changes cut very quickly, tests run more comprehensively, that I think will be of benefit for us going forward.
Next question is, how many active branches do you foresee to have once this is in action? It's one.
Yeah.
One, at most two at any given time. So there will always be the master branch. That'll be the one branch. And if in some certain times we may have a bug fix release branch active, but those will be short-lived. And as soon as the release is cut and tagged, we will remove the branch.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a situation where we need to backport a CVE to a number of old releases, at which point that would be like maximum branching. But even then, again, like Daniel was saying, those branches would be deleted, and that information would be stored in a tag, etc. All right, and so now we have silence for another minute and a half as we see if there are more questions.
I have a bunch of Snell jokes if anyone wants to hear them.
I'm going to speak for everyone and say no.
I don't know. They're pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all sluggers, but
Okay.
Got some more things popped in
Oh,
Oh.
you should play the Jeopardy music.
there.
Mark says perhaps a mechanism for a private build that fixes a specific issue that occurs outside of release patch cycle. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely worth consideration. Jochen asks, not a question. I've said it before, but I really like the new release strategy and I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm.
I appreciate that, Jochen. We've put an insane amount of thought into this and we've talked to a lot of people, Susan included, and I can't tell you how excited we are. I mean, we've spent basically the last 6 months doing everything we can to try and figure out how to overhaul these processes so that we can achieve better stability and more rapid releases. And I mean, we look at the 2019 2.1 and the fact that there were a lot of bugs in it, and attribute that in large part to many of the changes we're trying to make, right? Trying to make it so that those point releases aren't just a swath of additions that have happened over the course of 6 months, but that they are targeted, they're well tested, and that those change deltas are tight, and that we can have these continual releases. Incredibly excited about this. All right. I think that we've done good here. I think that we've answered questions. And this helps significantly as people go over the SEP. If you feel as though there's something in text that either deviates from our discussion here or deviates from your understanding, of course, please comment. We want to get this new process moving as quickly as possible, again, based purely heavily on the fact that we've been working on it for quite some time. And we're excited to get the ball rolling. And there is a bit of migration over to this process, but we've already done a lot of that work. Yeah, we're excited about getting this done, and I'm deeply grateful for everyone's support and for the extremely well thought out questions and comments, and for the fact that it does seem as though our initial responses are positive. So we are excited about this. Kavi, is there anything else that we need to cover in here, or can we wrap up?
Yeah, we can wrap up.
All right. Until next time, and thank you, everybody. And yes, we can definitely cover more of this in Slack, and as well as discussion on the SEP itself, especially as we seek to find greater clarity. Okay. We'll see you all next time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.